Today on the TMZ Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the TMZ Podcast. I'm Charlie Cotton, and today I'm joined by my good friend and sage legal mind, Derek Kaufman.
I don't recall ever saying we were good friends, but...
And my colleague, Derek Kaufman.
Good to see you, Charlie.
We've got some legal stories to unpack with you today. We're going to cover the sort of celebrity element in the Donald Trump indictment. We're going to talk about Tyrese. He's suing Home Depot, which he calls Disneyland.
One of the most fun... I mean, it's a serious lawsuit, but it's also a ridiculous lawsuit. We'll get into it.
Yeah, it's entertaining at the very least.
Yes.
But to begin with, this story about The Blind Side, or just Blind Side, the movie, it's dominating the internet for all these interesting reasons that change how people view the movie now.
This has been a fascinating story that has been developing because this was the ultimate feel-good movie. You remember when it came out, Sandra Bullock wins the Oscar. The movie is sort of saccharine and sweet because Michael Oher, this guy who was an offensive lineman for the Ravens for many years, was essentially brought into this family. I'm hesitating to use the word adopted because of what's going on in the lawsuit, but the way the movie's presented...
He wasn't adopted.
He was not adopted. Legally was not adopted, but the way the movie's presented is he was welcomed into this home by these sort of white saviors, the Tuohy family, and they did want to adopt him and treated him like a son, and that was the whole performance. Was she took him shopping just like one of her own children and so forth. Michael Oher is saying, hey, I got nothing from that movie. Zero. The movie ended up grossing over $300 million, a huge success, obviously Oscars and all of that stuff. And Michael Oher is saying, you know what this was? This was a legal document shoved in my face when I was going to Ole Miss, and they said, this is a way to formalize this relationship so you can go to Ole Miss and be a part of our family. But it's not an adoption. It's a conservatorship. And what do we think of with conservatorships?
Britney Spears.
Oh, you think it was Britney. You think of Britney because conservatorships typically are designed for people who are not of sound mind or body to make decisions themselves. Michael Oher is a healthy young man of full mind, has all of his faculties and can make decisions on his own. So it feels icky.
Now, the family, the Tuohys, are saying that they got him to sign a conservatorship because he was over the age of 18, so he couldn't be adopted. And the conservatorship was there so that it would help his chances of getting into Ole Miss because obviously NCAA is like strict and that sort of stuff. And the dad, who was played by, Tim McGraw in the movie.
Great performance
by Tim McGraw. He's a booster of the school. He played football there. And so they thought that sort of like, because this guy was a legend at Ole Miss,
if he's connected to me, a booster of the school, a well-known guy, because that guy sold his used car dealership or something for several $100 million.
Oh, no, it was, it said fast food.
Oh, fast food. I'm sorry. You're right. He had fast food chains. He had a bunch of franchises, and he ended up making a ton of money on that. So this is not a family that needed extra money necessarily.
So I don't know very much about sort of like how you can go to schools if you're an athlete in America, like a young athlete. Does it make sense that someone might have to be under a conservatorship in order to pass whatever bar it is to get into that university?
I want to reserve judgment on what exactly their motives, but maybe. So if you're a very prominent booster and you want to pull the strings that you're able to pull because he donated a lot of money to Ole Miss, it would maybe be helpful to say, this is a member of my family.
Yes.
This is not just some kid I want to sort of a recruit out of the ordinary, some third party. This is a member of my family. I want to sort of grease the wheels a little bit. And to show you, we've got documents saying he's kind of a member of my family. I make decisions on his behalf. That's what a conservatorship is. So maybe. I also thought they might want to say, look, Michael Oher was entering a world of professional athletics and amateur athletics where there's a lot of scummy agents who could take advantage of a kid who doesn't have parents to sort of look out for him. So they said, we'll step in, we'll make sure nobody takes advantage of you. So there are certainly benign and perfectly legitimate reasons to have this kind of instrument in place. But when I looked at the lawsuit that he filed or the motion in his conservatorship case to terminate it, the provisions say he's not allowed. No contract can be signed by Michael Oher without the approval of his conservators. So they're really putting restrictions on his ability to go make money for himself without their approval.
But so that conservatorship was supposedly in order to get into like the college.
Yeah.
it supposedly had nothing to do with this future movie deal that wasn't even on the radar when the conservatorship was signed. Is that right?
And sure, Michael Oher was already a Baltimore Raven. So the movie was conceived as the story. Michael Lewis wrote a book. Michael Lewis is the famous guy who wrote Moneyball and so forth. So it was optioned. The movie Blindside was optioned from a Michael Lewis book. And you know, the Tuohys are saying we didn't make a huge amount of money off of this.
Saying
we made $14,000.
$14,000. They're saying there's no
and they
money.
said Michael got that as well.
So the guy who wrote the book.
Michael Lewis,
the guy who wrote the book,
said, so the Tuohys said that from Michael Lewis's share in the movie, the author of the book that the movie is based on, he gave us each $14,000 based on his cut of the movie that was being optioned because it was their life story. And they say Michael Oher, the guy here, the football player, got that as well. Michael says he got nothing. So we'll have to see how this plays out factually. But also, Michael says they cut a huge deal where they got a cut of the profits. In his legal papers, he says there's a $225,000, sort of upfront money, then 2.5% of the money going forward, which would go to the Tuohys and their kids because those are their legal heirs, and they were also featured in the movie. And he's saying, where's my cut? You've used the movie is based on my life story, my likeness, my image, my name. And you guys have cut me out of it. It's a nasty lawsuit.
Why did it take this long for him to bring this?
That's the big mystery. He says he first found out in February of 2023 that this was how this was all structured, and he was originally told, didn't really understand that it wasn't a true adoption, even though he says the Tuohys said it was a conservatorship, but they said it had to be done that way. So I don't know how this all came to light for Michael. I suspect that maybe a lawyer talked to him and said, like, wow, every time we do a contract, I have to go talk to this Tuohy family? You're a 37-year-old man. What is this thing?
He's still under conservatorship right now.
Yeah, they filed documents to terminate it formally. I mean,
why aren't there people like outside saying "Free Michael" with the signs like Britney people did?
I don't think people knew. I had always assumed he was adopted consensually, because when you're an adult and you're past 18, you can just say, "I'd like this family to adopt me." It's sort of like a symbolic gesture. I'm now your son, but you don't have a conservatorship, which is what Britney Spears was under. That's a very formal legal structure, and now he's saying, "Get rid of this." And maybe his lawyers said, this is ridiculous that this family still looks over your contracts. You're a retired 37-year-old man who knows what he's doing.
Would you be willing to adopt me? Like, I'm a bit over 18.
I've thought about it, but you're going to have to, tend to some of your hygiene.
Oh, okay.
Can we reach an agreement? I might have to clip the hair, get the old Charlie back with that high fade.
You're my dad, so you need to teach me all these things. Like, you teach me how to clean my butt.
I'd prefer to have you in a conservatorship. Is that okay? I can sign you up for one of those.
On to our next story.
Fascinating story, though. This we'll continue to follow this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. So Trump was indicted yesterday in Georgia. He's facing RICO charges for the 2020 election interference case. The most interesting thing about this story, I thought, was this whole RICO thing.
Yes.
That he's being charged like a mob and a mob boss. That when you get all this group of people together committing crimes in concert with one another, they can all be tried sort of together. And so one of the people that is being tried with Donald Trump is going to be Kanye West's former publicist.
Yeah, it's wild. So RICO statutes exist in every state. There's also a federal version, but they're essentially conspiracy statutes. And the allegations in this indictment are very carefully laid out about how Trump was sort of a hub of all these spokes of ways to overturn the election, particularly in Georgia. Now, we've seen he is facing, this is his fourth criminal case. I mean, the guy's got the hush money case, the January 6th case, the documents case, and now the Georgia case. So he's under four criminal indictments.
I think you just listed them from least sort of like perilous for him to most. I think you just accidentally...
You think Georgia's the most perilous, not January 6th?
Apparently because of pardoning. You can't pardon yourself from Georgia because it's a state, not federal. Look at me go with my lawyer talk.
You're very, very good. The president can only pardon for federal crimes. A governor can pardon for state crimes. So the Georgia governor could pardon.
The crimes are just so interconnected and there's so many different players and that sort of stuff in the Georgia case that it seems harder to sort of like weasel out and find an exception. I think the documents case is, it's less sort of hearsay. It's more like in black and white. This is what happened, and there's recordings and there's more evidence. Some of the other ones a bit more sort of like the Stormy Daniels one is a bit like, I was trying to pay off Stormy Daniels because I wanted to silence my wife.
Yes.
It had nothing because I didn't want my wife to find out. It had
I
nothing
didn't
to do with the
endanger
election.
the country by paying off one of my mistresses.
So people, I mean, there's speculation that this one yesterday could be like the one that's the baddest news.
It does feel the most specific, I will say, in terms of like, here is a conspiracy with a very specific agenda about the votes that took place in Georgia. So I think people can wrap their head around it. When you look at January 6th, it was chaos. And yes, he was saying things on video, but it was hard to sort of anchor what went on exactly to his words. They've done a good job in the case of laying that all out, but I do think if a Republican gets in the White House, they'll pardon him on that because it's a messy issue. This is not as messy. This is pretty direct, like sort of evidence that he was specifically trying to overturn the results in this state so that he could change the outcome of the presidential election. I do agree with you. This is a problem for him. I think more sort of troubling for him overall is the overhang of 4 criminal cases. He has to stand on a debate stage and convince the American public and convince Republicans first. He's the front runner, but is he electable? Is he going to be facing prison time?
Will he stand on that debate stage? And even if he does or whatever, like, are any of these court cases going to like get him before he potentially gets elected?
I don't know if he'll stand on that debate stage. Why does he have to? He's
clearly
running ahead. DeSantis is dead in the water. Ramaswamy is sort of coming up, but he's a Trump supporter. He says he'll pardon him, so he's already got sort of the young star behind him, presumably looking to be his VP. I mean, that's what everyone is thinking about Ramaswamy. So why should he? There's only downside. Yeah,
there's no reason to. I don't think he will.
But I don't know exactly how he's going to position himself. He does have to debate the Democratic nominee. He'll have to get on stage and make his case.
But we'll be in the throes of all these legal cases then. Like, he'll be on the stand, like at his court case, go straight there to the debate stage, go on the stand of the debate.
Yes.
Like, it's going to be like you wouldn't believe it in a movie. And I've thought that all throughout this Trump age.
Yep.
But this is particularly like the walls are closing in on him legally. Also, he's a great chance to be the Republican nominee, if not a decent chance to be president again. We could like literally have a president behind bars, pardon himself to get out and like, I was going to say serve the country, but God knows what he's doing.
The possibilities are sort of endless. I don't think he would ultimately serve in a prison because the national interest in having our guys sit in the White House, maybe they defer the sentence and say you'll serve it afterwards. I don't know how that will play out, but I do know that he is saying witch hunt. He says this is a left-wing prosecutor. He'll continue to bang that drum. But at some point, just the volume of people and prosecutors going after him is going to be a problem for him. He's got to address all of it. And he can say it's a conspiracy, but it has real practical consequences on the future of the country. How do you convince the middle voters that it's okay, we can vote for Trump because he'll figure this out?
But in a two-horse race, when both the horses are like super, super old.
So old.
And especially if there's like a third party like RFK or someone stealing votes from potentially a Democratic candidate,
it's very conceivable.
Trump stands a decent chance.
You're 100% right. There's a real possibility, especially with RFK ascendant. You're right. If he picks off votes, he's mostly going to pick them off from Biden.
Yeah.
He comes from the Kennedys, so he's going to pick off Democratic votes, even though his ideas are pretty out there for the Democratic Party mainstream. But you're right. And on a debate stage, yes, they're both old, but Trump is very vibrant.
Yeah.
He's very spicy on a debate stage.
He's spicy
tough,
meatball,
man. Biden is sleepy.
Yeah, sleepy
Grandpa
and
wants
spicy.
to go to bed and have a butterscotch.
Okay. On to our final story. Tyrese is suing Home Depot, what he calls Disneyland, because a couple of his employees who happen to be Mexican were trying to buy stuff from Home Depot using Tyrese's card, and the overzealous Home Depot lady said, no, I need to see an ID. So they called up Tyrese on FaceTime, said, here's my ID. This is my face right here. Let him buy this wood or whatever it was. The lady said, no, you need to be in the store. That is our company policy. So Tyrese had to lug himself from home, which is only like 5 minutes away, I think, to Home Depot to show his face so they could buy the whatever. He's now pressing charges against Home Depot
filed a civil suit.
He filed a civil suit.
Yes.
Thinking that it was some sort of racism. You're a lawyer by name.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how, if you actually are.
My bona fides, yeah.
Your bona fides. What do you think about this case? Does he stand any chance? Why would he bring it?
I find the case absurd on a lot of levels. So first of all, he's alleging racial profiling because he left the store but left his credit card and they needed to see an ID match the credit card. This sounds like a neutral policy. What you look for in discrimination lawsuits is, are they specifically and intentionally isolating you based on your race? Do they check the ID plus the credit card of white individuals just as often? I don't know. That's a factual issue. He's going to say, I've studied this and, I've observed that they never ask for the ID to match with the credit card for white patrons. They only do it for brown and black patrons.
Well, he's saying
that would be a problem. But on its face, the policy has nothing to do with race. It has to do with, are you using a stolen credit card or not? But he has to overcome that.
But he's saying, basically it's never happened to me. As a black man, it's never happened to me, and I've been going to Home Depot for decades now. He said he's spent $10 million there in his lifetime. He's saying it was racism against the Mexican employees of Tyrese who
are also members of this lawsuit. So they are suing along with Tyrese against Home Depot. And the other point he says in the lawsuit is these two guys come with me all the time to Home Depot. They're my contractors or my workers. So it's not as if the Home Depot employees had never seen the three of us together. I think that's going to be a key factual point for him. I still think if a new clerk, let's say, who's never seen Tyrese in the store, there's a lot of turnover. Cashiers change all the time. Maybe she didn't know he comes to the store all the time with them. She sees two employees and then she gets a credit card that says Tyrese Gibson. She knows Tyrese is a celebrity and that's not Tyrese. Isn't it like negligent on her part to just say, all right, let's swipe it? What if she thinks, I don't want to be held responsible for Tyrese, getting stolen from, if this credit card shouldn't be in their hands. I'm going to check to see that Tyrese gave it to them. Now, when he signs in on FaceTime and says, yes, I know those guys, maybe she should give it up, but she's following her policy. She says the guy has to be here.
She's also being recorded, and you never know where recordings can go. And if your boss is watching, maybe the recording, you don't want to get fired. Look,
I want to talk about his damages too, though. First of all, he says he spent $10 million over the years. In his lawsuit, he says I spent about $1 million over the years. Either way, it has nothing to do with the damages you ask for in a lawsuit. That's what I find kind of silly about the lawsuit is, what harm did you get from this incident? Those are your damages, not how much you spent.
Emotional suffering. Look, I think this is a ridiculous lawsuit, but I hate employees who take their job too seriously.
Yes.
And I'm only saying that because Harvey's not listening to the podcast. But seriously, just chill. Just run it. But two, what was my second point again?
What if she runs it and Tyrese storms in and says, you ran my credit card for who? Was I here?
Yeah, right. I like that Tyrese is standing up for his employees. You know what I mean?
That is a virtuous thing to do.
When this came out, we weren't sure who the racism was apparently against. Was it about Tyrese or was it against his employees? Now that I know that he's just being a really benevolent boss, I kind of want him to win. You know what I mean? I don't know if got the specifics of the cases, but I see someone taking their job too seriously, and I see a very, very nice boss. Who are you going to root for in this case?
That's so fascinating that you take the side of Tyrese, who is this huge global superstar, against the poor clerk who's trying to scratch out a living, and now she is shamed in the store with him holding a camera, watching her say, sure, go ahead and call the CEO. I felt badly for her. In the David versus Goliath, Tyrese is Goliath, okay? Tyrese is not David. Okay. She's David. I don't know her name, but shout out to her.
Shout out. Her name is probably not David. Well, actually, you've completely changed my mind.
I'm glad.
I think I'm Team Home Depot now. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining me here today, Derek.
All right.
We'll see you guys here tomorrow. Bye.